Hello, everyone out in YouTube land. I'm Maureen Ballatori. I'm so excited to be here on behalf of Visit NC Farms. Today, we are talking about how to premiumize your destination. Let me give you a little bit about myself to start. I grew up on an upstate New York dairy farm. I am a designer, marketer, and strategist. I own a creative marketing agency for food, beverage, and agriculture brands. We are based in upstate New York, still not far from the dairy farm I grew up on, but we serve clients all over the US and the world. And our whole shtick is we love helping clients solve big creative problems. And one of the ways we've been doing that lately is kind of taking that show on the road and really helping the industry in an immersive way to understand the ways that you can solve a big creative problem. And so the big creative problem that we're talking about today is premiumization, right? So we're talking about premiumizing your destination. We are going to do that in sort of tackle that in three ways today. So the first one, understanding new ideas for how to level up. What are some of the ways that you can get started with your ag tourism destination? Optimizing pricing structures, and then marketing efforts that allow you to attract a premium audience. We've got a ton in this one, and so I'm going to go pretty fast. There are three other videos on the Visit NC Farm platforms that I've created. This is probably the most advanced of the four. So if you're looking for somewhere to start, I would not start here. There are three other videos that may be a better place to get some early stage stuff. But if you're a little bit more of an advanced marketer or you've been doing this for quite a while, this is the place for you. So let's start with this idea of understanding excellence. When we're looking at premium agritourism destinations in agritourism and outside of agritourism, what do we look for? Maureen, why do you look outside of agritourism? And the reason is because when we draw inspiration from other industries, it helps us from operating in a vacuum, right? Where we are just kind of doing what our neighbor's doing. When we look outside of industry and we're not just exclusively looking at ag tourism, we can draw some kind of new inspiration into the mix. And so, as a starting point, I do want to start with a point of reference that's in ag tourism. And so, this is a premium destination that's on a working sheep farm in New Zealand. It's called Rosewood Cape Kidnappers Working Sheep Farm, and they are a premium destination. And so we'll talk about how do they position that. So number one, the look and feel of their website is certainly elevated, and there's a lot to be said for that, right? Your first look at this, it's a vibe. You're seeing that the typography is really tight, it has good balance to it, the photography is great. But what I want to focus on here is one level beneath that, which is the experiences and the focus of what we're talking about today with the idea of premiumizing. A great way to do that is through the experiential method on the farm. So, within that theme, one of the things that Cape Kidnappers does really well is they're telling the sustainability story. Now, this is something that's pretty unique to agriculture. There are other industries that can pull this story with sustainability. We see it often in CPG, consumer packaged goods, with the idea of, farming method was X, and so we are great for Y because we leverage this farming method. But you're the source, right? You are at the beginning of sustainability, and you're the one that's pulling the puppet strings. And so you have a really big opportunity to talk about what you're doing from a sustainability standpoint. So that's a great way to begin with experiential and premiumization, and leveraging experiences to tell a certain story is to start with sustainability. And so some of that is just storytelling on your website. Some of that is going to be what you talk about when people come to your destination. And some of it may be rooted, pun intended, in your day in the life kind of stories. Now, I can't tell you how many destinations I have spoken to, farmers and folks who are operating an ag tourism destination, and I talk about day in the life content, and they're like, nobody really wants that kind of thing. Is anybody really even interested in day of the life content? 100% they are. It feels like old hat to you to herd the sheep or plant the pumpkins, or why you're choosing various pumpkin seeds, or are you planting heirlooms, or what sort of variety are you planting? All of those things are wildly fascinating to people who are not in the industry. So this day in the life kind of content can be an experiential thing that you're talking about to help people understand why and how your destination is premium and unique. I also love the idea when we're talking about creating experiences. I love the idea of elevating the everyday. And so it can, so again, along the lines of day in the life, it can be something that is simple to you, but is really beautiful to the folks who come to your farm. And so what's referenced here is they do this Can-Am tour of the property, um, which is pretty simple. I mean, you could do that with a quad, a four-wheeler that you're taking people through. Now, you want to make sure that your insurance is going to cover that, that it's something that, is covered and you're not putting yourself at risk, that sort of thing. But it can be on the low-hanging fruit side. And so Can-Am tour as a starting point, right? I'm sure they're making people wear seatbelts in there, but they're taking them around the farm. You can do that in a small operation or a larger operation and charge for it. We're going to talk in a minute about what this farm is charging for these experiences, but that's a really good place to start. This is just a night tour. This is a winery tour. These are tours, right, of the property. But what elevates it to premium is number one, the price point, number two, the design, and number three is going to be the storytelling. So, how you're telling the story of why this is an experience and getting people in the moment with sights and sounds of what they're about to experience are some of the things that really elevate it and take it up a notch. And so for Cape Kidnappers, this Can-Am adventure, they're charging 680 USD for two people. This night adventure that they're doing, which is just a guided vehicle walking tour after dark, they're charging 226 USD. Stargazing, they didn't even buy the stars, right? They're just setting up the experience and leveraging the property that they have to create this and charging 170 USD. So my point in these examples is that premiumization does not have to be beyond reach, right? It can be something that is achievable when you think about creatively finding a place to start. And that can be simpler than you think. So, key takeaways from this case study: your design and your positioning matter, your external appearance. I said it from the look of the homepage, right? That it is a vibe. It is nice and tight in terms of beautiful photography that's well lit, that's clear and crisp. The typography is well balanced, that sort of thing. And carrying through that experience of the vibe that you're getting on the website is going to match the expectation of what people have when they come on site. So that through line is really important for your customer to be able to understand what they can expect. And so the other thing about that too is if your average ticket price for your everyday user is $15 and your starting point of your premium offering is $5,000, we've got a really, really wide spread in there. You can start small, right? What could you charge $100 for? What could you charge? Do something like really, really off the wall, really unique, charge 2,500 bucks for it, but curate that experience so that it's like nothing else. The sky's the limit. You can set whatever price you want. You can create whatever experience you want. You just have to set the vision for it. And I love the idea of starting with low-hanging fruit, sunsets, stay in the life, sustainability, story experiences, things like that. If you want to make this a little bit more of a workshop, you could pause this video here and just note what else you notice about going through this case study that you may want to note for your own future benefit. Going on to the next one, I promised a case study that was outside of ag. And so, of course, we've got to go to Disney. No one does it better. And what we're going to look at here is how they are positioning their premium offerings, what that looks like, sounds like. Maureen, we don't have Disney budgets. I know. And this is exactly why it's great to look at organizations like Disney, because they do have the budgets to A/B test, to really deeply understand their customer and how much their customer is willing to spend in terms of price tolerance, all of that. And so when they are the ones doing the research, you can learn from them, right? What can you observe about the way that they are marketing themselves that you could borrow some inspiration from? So, where they are talking about their experiences, number one, again, beautiful photography, like really clear, right? You can click on each one of these and get some more understanding of the experience itself. So, let's look at the top one here, this idea of Symphony of Us. And so, when you click through, if you click right here, when you click through, this is the page that you're landing on. And so, what can we observe from this? I've pulled out a couple notes. So, number one, we've got really authentic photography happening here that we're living that experience. We can put ourselves in the moment. We're also seeing really great experiential copy, feast your eyes, lighting up the sky, delight in a dramatic show. Those are words that evoke the feeling and the experience itself. And they're also leveraging emotional language, like the idea of building memories and bringing people together. And so those are really nuanced tricks that make a big difference in how you talk about your experiences and the farm as a whole. Frankly, you don't have to apply these philosophies just to creating premium experiences. It can be just about how you talk about the food on your menu. The other thing that Disney does really well is varied pricing options. So they have lower level to higher level experiences, and they try to make it really clear for people of what options are available. So from just a 1 day water park to, and these are not necessarily in order, but to something that's park hopper where you would go to multiple parks in your experience, right? You also have the option of lightning lane, fast pass. We love this. Not unusual for you to explore something like this for your farm, right? And one of the things that I love about the way that Disney does this is that you can purchase it either 3 days or 7 days in advance of your visit, depending on your status. So if you are on US soil and you're staying on a resort property, I believe you can purchase it up to 7 days in advance. But if you're international, you can't purchase it until you're on US soil. And if you're staying off property, I think there's somewhere in that window as well. So what's that mean? Why are they doing it like that? It's because they're leaning into their best customers, right? The folks who they want to support, the folks who want to stay on property, they're giving them and they're benefiting from that and that with that investment, right? They're giving priority to them so that it's another extra benefit that's offered to that audience. So keep that in mind in terms of if you wanted to explore a fast pass, maybe that's only available to your best customers that they get priority and they can like sign up as a member to your farm where they get perks like that, where they get first choice at some of the things that often sell out on your farm. And if you're not to that state yet, that's okay too. What could you put in place that would allow for some perks that don't cost money, right? But that are just like timing things, like this idea of purchasing the fast pass that's going to save time and you can purchase it, in advance depending on your status. So brilliant things there. The other thing that Disney does incredibly well is they have the Disney Institute, which is all about operational excellence and creating magic for your customers and really the idea of going above and beyond. The more you can teach this to your staff, it makes a huge difference, especially as you're working to premiumize your destination and you're working to take things to the next level. That means that every single person drinks the Kool-Aid. Every single person is all in on what you're delivering. They understand what that is. And they deliver it every day at every moment, from the parking lot to the conversation that they're having with their friends at, a party on a Friday night. They are advocating for your business. And then the more you can do to extend that to your customer experience as well, so that your customers are advocating for you, all the better. So the other point that I like to make when I do this Disney case study too is that premium does not mean stuck up. It can still be approachable. It does not have to mean that you're charging, a crazy amount of money for your experiences. It can be about little bonuses and little extras and still approachable, but benefiting the overall experience. And that experience is king. So it's remarkable guest experiences, it's streamlined flow, so on and so forth. Another opportunity here to pause if you want to do this workshop style to kind of think on going through this. What are some ideas that pop into your head that may be approachable for your farm? So summarizing this core learning goal to understand new ideas for leveling up your destination experiences, charging premium rates, you have to build the premium experiences that take details into account. Customer experience starts way before your customer sets foot on property. It's from the way that you're talking about your farm online to your social media experiences, the way that you respond to comments on social media, how often you're sending your emails, soup to nuts. Benchmarking other destinations can really help draw inspiration to create something really unique too. And so I gave Disney as the out of industry experience. There's endless opportunities, right? Pick a brand you admire and do a deep dive into what do I admire about them? And literally question and answer with yourself. What do I admire about this brand? What do I love about the experience? A story that I tell often is I've worn glasses my whole life, like since I was in first grade. And I ordered a pair once from Warby Parker and they didn't come exactly as I expected. I expected a little bit of a different color. And so I called customer service and a human being answered the phone in 4 rings. I was floored. And I forever, like, I just got my daughter a pair of Warby Parker glasses. I'll forever be a customer and an advocate and a fan because they go above and beyond in certain ways. And so those things really are meaningful. Okay, part two here. So, talking about some of the essential elements of implementation and trends as it relates to building your premium experiences. So, in terms of some of the essentials, and this could be along the line of what we were just talking about in terms of low-hanging fruit, right? It's the idea of saving time, elevating basic opportunities, and then you could also explore something like extra perks, like keepsakes. You know, one of the classic ones is bringing a photographer on property to kind of capture your experiences there and charging for that. Early access perks in terms of the saving time. We've talked about this with the idea of the fast pass. But really think about how can you reward your most loyal customers? And we'll talk more about loyalty later on. But the idea of do you give your email subscribers early access to tickets? Do you have a POS system that allows you to keep track of, you understand who your best 50 or your best 20 or your best 10 customers are? What if you called them and said, hey, this is Farmer John, and I wanted to thank you for being one of the best customers of our business and really just appreciate you. How long is that really going to take you? If you started by prioritizing your top 10 customers that support you again and again, what do you think it's going to mean to them to get that phone call from you? They're going to be elated. They're going to become mega fans even more than they already were. So those little things, again, this does not have to be a big investment of what you're doing to premiumize the business. It can be the little things that really have a big ripple effect. Discounts might also not be the answer. And so again, when we're thinking about that best customer, they're going to come regardless. They don't necessarily need to save $5 here and there. They're coming to you because they love you. And so, what are ways that you can reward that loyalty with early access or, other experiences like we talked about? Discounts might not be the answer. The other idea too about elevating basics, I like the idea of there are some things that we just expect to be terrible, like calling customer service because your glasses didn't show up how you expected, where a brand can really take it up a notch like Warby Parker did for me. Singapore Airlines is another one where flying just kind of sucks. I got stuck last week in an airport for 7 more hours than I planned to be there. That is just a bummer. And so when you have an airline that is elevating the basic and is really taking things up a notch, it feels felt, right? It is felt by your customer because they're so used to getting something awful. Why was I so floored when I called Warby Parker customer service about my glasses? Because I expected to be on hold for 20 minutes. So thinking about those pain points that your customer has or that the industry has that you may be able to overcome is a really great way to think about elevating basics. So this is what it looks like on Singapore Airlines. And if I was flying an airline like this when I got stuck in the airport last week, maybe I wouldn't have minded so much because it would have made up for it in this experience. And that's not doable in every scenario. And this is definitely the far end of the spectrum. But really great, just again, mindset in terms of the idea of what can you do to just bring those basics up a notch. Um, Airlines didn't used to offer first class, and now this is first class for the Singapore Airlines. Now most airlines are differentiating in this way where there's an economy and a coach and a premium economy and business class and first class. And then there's other perks that allow you to get into the lounges and so on and so forth. So it's, and then there's other airlines who are going the whole opposite direction where they're not even assigning seats. That's kind of changing now, I've heard, for Southwest, but that's beside the point. The idea is you kind of want to go against the current, right? That's the idea that I'm talking about here is like, what is the low-hanging fruit? What's the simple thing that you could do that you could change that would be experiential that would make a really big difference? Keepsakes. I mentioned this on a previous slide. I call it an essential element because it's so simple. Um, it could be something like a branded tote bag that is not plastered with your logo. I can't emphasize this enough. It should be like a really cool tote bag that someone gets and says, wow, that was really neat. Or I mentioned the photography experience. Disney does this with the idea of there's a photographer that is taking your picture and then you can buy a whole bundle of the photos at the end. If that's not feasible for you, what if you just took a picture in one spot? Again, these things can be modified to work for you based on what works for your operation. That maybe you're taking a family photo every year for, Susie Johnson and her family, and they have an opportunity to take home like a good premium photo that's going to be a nice keepsake, and they watch their kids grow every year. And how beautiful would that be? There's also one for one opportunities, like Tom's does this with their shoes. You buy a pair of shoes, they give a pair of shoes. So there could be something like that as part of your keepsake, or your give back could be something along the lines of you buy a ticket and we do this community give back for the business as well. I want to take a moment to talk a little bit about some of the trends that are happening in the industry, because one of the things that we've noticed when it comes to just a healthy business across the board, but specifically as it relates to premiumization, is the idea that food is one of the things that really takes a business up a notch, because food adds to that unique experience. People are in the moment, and so they're willing to spend a little bit more too. And so the more you can lean into food trends, beverage trends, the more you can lean into that experiential opportunity that people are signing up for when they're coming to your destination. So in the food category, it's spicy, it's functional and wellness. In the beverage category, it's also spicy but savory as well. Cannabis infused if it's legal in your state, or if it becomes legal in your state, that's another thing coming down the pike that is a really popular consumable from the beverage category. Functional and wellness is also really important in beverage. And then non-alcoholic, like good non-alcoholic options, not just, oh, we have apple juice in a juice box, but like legit, good, nuanced, complex non-alcoholic beverages. It really makes a difference. Sustainable and environmentally friendly, we talked about as well. And then there's the idea of third space, and I'll talk about that down the line a little bit. I want to just make one quick note about GLP-1s, which is the weight loss drug that is really gaining widespread popularity. It's growing like wildfire. GLP-1 increase in popularity means that when people are consuming food and beverage of any kind, if they're on a GLP-1, sometimes it changes, like, your appetite is different and your macro intentions are different from a nutrition standpoint. And so you might just want to look at, like, do I have something on my menu that would be something that somebody on a weight loss drug would be interested in consuming, that maybe isn't just water, right? So just a good thing to think about. The other reason why staying ahead of trends is so important is because it just helps you maintain a uniqueness, right? When you're the first one doing something out of the gate, like Swicy has been a popular thing for a number of years now. And so, but if you started implementing Swicy trends that were like while it was on the upswing, you would drive more trial, right? Which is going to sell more food and bev. And so that is a premium opportunity because you're staying at the forefront of the trend, and gives you an opportunity to be unique. So what do I mean when I say spicy? It is sweet and spicy together. Word smash becomes swicy. So some of the ways that we see that are like a hot honey here. This is a Mexican walking corn, which is delicious, by the way. Highly recommend. But these sorts of things, this is popular across the board. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. Swicy beverages is another one. So these are like hot blueberry and hot strawberry and that sort of thing. We're also seeing savory beverages, as I mentioned too. And again, these are nuanced, and these can be alcoholic or non-alcoholic, but savory flavors in bev are something that people are looking for. I mentioned non-alcoholic. These are some options with like Lyre's, the Italian spirits here in the background, or Seedlip is a really popular one. However, I don't actually think that you need to buy these. You can if you want to, and if you think that there's a market for your customer, it's something that you want to try, go grab a bottle or two and kind of see how it goes. But I really think that there is a huge opportunity to position non-alcoholic beverages without buying anything extra. You know, it's the glass that you serve the apple juice in. It's the values that the brands stand for that you choose to put on your menu. It is the garnish that goes on, you know, in the cup, right? That makes it feel a little bit more elevated. And so when again we're talking about premiumization, when we're talking about that elevation, instead of just sparkling water, but it's some sort of cocktail name and it's sparkling water and it comes with a splash of cranberry so that it's got a fun color to it and it has I don't know, a lime in it. That's actually my go-to is like Sprite with a splash of crayon and a lime. Um, Creating something like that, give it a fun name, call it, you know, the NA Summer in a glass, and you serve that for whatever price point works for your market. Doesn't have to be that you're going out to buy these bottles on bottles of NA spirits. It can be very simple, but it should be delicious. Like test them and make sure they taste good. So as I mentioned, functional and wellness is another one that's wildly off the charts. This has been a popular trend for a number of years and is continuing and will continue to be popular. Wellness shots being one where, you know, you're kind of just juicing things and it, you know, condenses down into like an immune boosting wellness shot. Anything you can speak to with functional, like it's these are, you know, they're calling it immune boosting, and so there's something in them that makes them immune boosting. Do your research on that to see what could we sort of blend together to create these wellness shots, sell them for, you know, again, what is the going rate? I hesitate to give prices at some points because everyone's market is so different. You're in different parts of the state. And so, you know, your price tolerance for your customer may be different. But this is just like a quick reference chart of some of the trends in functional and wellness. So, like maple syrup for weight loss, pea protein for wellness, moringa, not haven't heard of that one obviously, but for focus, so on and so forth. Peppermint for gut health, that sort of thing. So these are not specialty premium things that you're buying. These are generally, in some cases, like maple syrup, right? They're things that are already in your cupboard. And so, you know, you don't have to spend a lot to make a lot of impact. Cannabis infused, as I mentioned, if this is legalized in your state or becomes legalized in your state, cannabis infused beverages are taking off like wildfire. Another thing that people, especially young adults, are really looking for. And then that sustainability story. And so if you're unsure of really like how to tell this story for your farm, highly recommend watching this documentary, Kiss the Ground, narrated by Woody Harrelson. It's fantastic. I watched it with my kids who are 9 and 10 now. We watched it maybe a year or two ago. And even they loved it. So it's really approachable for all. Great understanding of regenerative agriculture and sustainability and why those things are important. And I say that because, as I mentioned in the beginning of this, sustainability is such an important message. You're so connected to it as the farmer. Being aware of the story that's being told, if you're not already, is a good practice for the industry. Studies also show, so this is from a PricewaterhouseCoopers Voice of the Consumer survey, says that consumers are willing to pay nearly 10% more for sustainability driven premium products, even as the economy wavers and pricing changes and everything like that, demand increases, this remains true. I mentioned the idea of third space. And so this is the idea of people really want a place to hang out and spend their time that is not work and is not home. So it's the, hey, let's meet at XYZ on the way home. You want to grab a drink at whatever. How do you become that third place? That's a really good question to ask yourself, especially as it relates to how can I get my customer to stick around for longer? What's the average time that they're usually spending there? And if your ticketing data will tell you this, fantastic. Um, if not, then you can just do this by observation. How long am I observing? Maybe you keep track of it for a couple weeks just to see how long are people typically staying there. And then ask yourself, what could I do to get them to stay for longer? So, for example, if you're not serving any food, this is why food is such a game changer for many agritourism businesses, is because if you can feed them, then they can stay there longer. Maybe they're buying two beverages instead of buying one, that sort of thing, right? Maybe they're doing this tour instead of just that tour, or they're going to come and they're going to have lunch and then they're going to, shoot the apple cannon, whatever it is. So this idea of third space and stickiness and keeping people there for longer to enrich the experience is the concept here, and a really strong trend that can be leveraged by ag tourism. I want to spend a little bit talking about pricing strategies. I'm going to disclaimer this to say that I have done a whole topic on this section alone, like a whole webinar on this topic, the idea of premium pricing psychology, market positioning, that sort of thing. And so I'm going to scratch the surface and be as clear as possible in this regard, but it is a nuanced thing in terms of what you can charge. As it relates to the psychology of consumption, I want to talk about two things. One is the higher consumption means higher sales, which feels like a no duh, but you'll find as I talk about it, what I mean by that a little bit more. So higher consumption as it relates to higher sales, and then bundling of pricing. So of course there's many other aspects that go into the psychology of purchasing and that sort of thing. We're going to focus just on these two. And so this is leveraging a Harvard Business Review study where Bill spent $600 a year at a health club. Mary also spent $600 a year at a health club, but she did it on a monthly payment plan where she was spending $50 a month as opposed to Bill, who paid for the year up front. Now, when you think about and ask yourself and question and wonder who is likely to visit more regularly and who is more likely to renew their membership, which is what we want, right? We want people to come visit the farm more often. We want them to come year after year. That's why we're going through this study. So this is the same price. It is literally just, these are two different payment types, but they paid the same thing. They're going to the same club. Research shows that Mary, who paid on a monthly basis, is much more likely to exercise the club. So usage is increased than Bill, who paid upfront for the year. And Mary's satisfaction with the purchase will be higher, and she's far more likely to renew her membership when the year is over compared to Bill, who just paid upfront, right? So this is what I mean by higher consumption means higher sales. The more you can connect the purchase itself to when the person is enjoying the experience, the more likely they are to have higher satisfaction, which then increases their likelihood of repeating that purchase. The extent to which customers use the products they've paid for determines whether they will repeat the purchase. And so this means not only the idea of connecting the purchase to the use of the thing that they purchased with timing payments to maximize consumption, but also the idea of bundles and how things are bundled to increase the use case, their usage across the property. If there are things that they're not doing, they're going to feel like there were aspects that got left out. So a good way around that, consider weekday individual ticketing, and perhaps you're doing bundle pricing on the weekends so that you're doing the bundling and kind of giving people more bang for their buck on the weekend when they can come and try all of the things. And you're trying to get people to kind of build their own package during the week, as an example, right? So that they can make sure that they are tying their usage to their purchase, and they're only paying for exactly what they're getting. Why are we talking about annual and monthly pricing when you're a farm and you're a seasonal business? I like to try and think about the things that you're thinking and pair them back to you to explain why I'm presenting these various concepts. And so the idea here is that it's about customer loyalty, right? And so the more you can create that stickiness with that customer and loyalty in them to enjoy the experience that they have, the more likely they are to come back and the more willing they will be to pay a premium for that service offering. Let's look at another example. This is also from Harvard Business Review, and it relates specifically to price bundling. And so organizations, especially farms, are often bundling ticket prices for experiential services on the farm to increase demand for the products and services. And it does increase short-term demand, but it also may reduce consumption and therefore customer satisfaction, like we were talking about with the with the gym example, where Bill was paying for the year up front, but he really wasn't using it because he got further and further away from when he made that purchase. Okay, so there's two groups that went skiing. Let's say that they're in Vermont. They're skiing in Vermont. The first group, 50 people were surveyed in this scenario, 50 people in the other scenario. So in this first group, these individuals purchased 4 one-day ski tickets for $40. In the second group, they purchased 1 4-day ski pass for the same price. So take a minute to let that sink in because this can be really confusing, and I tend to lose people here when I give this example. Group 1, 4 one-day tickets. So remember what we were talking about in terms of individual pricing and bundling. So this is a non-bundled thing. They're like, I have 4 one-day tickets to use and it cost me $40 a pop. This other group was, I got a 4-day ski pass. It cost me $160. I bought one of those to ski for 4 days. The first group that bought 4 one-day passes have a 70% likelihood of skiing again if there is a day where they cannot ski. So that was the scenario here where both of these groups, they buy these 4-day passes, they go to the mountain. On the 4th day, it rains and it's so bad that the conditions are awful and they can't go out. So the first group had still a 70% likelihood of skiing again, and their satisfaction was 70%, even though they missed out on a day. So 4 individual passes, they could only go 3 of the days, and it was kind of like, well, we got to go for 3 days, we missed out on 1 day, no big deal. Whereas the other group that bought a 4-day pass had a 30% likelihood of skiing again, of coming back to this resort. Are they going to want to return to this resort to ski again? Most likely not, right? So, and this is literally just how the packages are presented, that the group 2 customer was upset that they bought a 4-day pass and they only got to ski 3 days, whereas the perception of the group that got 4 one-day passes, their satisfaction was significantly higher. Now, do I know the reasoning for this? Not necessarily, and I can't point to exactly what you should change in yours, that you bundle this and you don't bundle that, and so on and so forth. And it's just the nuance of the pricing psychology of how someone feels when they make their purchase, when they consume their consumables, their product or their service, and how they feel at the end of that experience. One of the common mistakes that happen in premiumization and in bundling is not a high enough price point. So this is a wine club, and so they've got 2 levels, the sort of the low level and the better level, the higher level, purchasing 12 bottles of wine compared to 18 bottles of wine. And this 18 bottle of wine group sold out. Like, they maximized the number that they were comfortable offering in this. And so what does that tell me? That tells the brand, your audience is asking for something at an even higher level, right? That there is tolerance from that customer because you have maxed out your offering in your most premium position to offer something even higher than that would likely still have tolerance for, right? Especially because you've got this group that has sold out at this level. As it relates to premium pricing too, one of the ideas to kind of think about is how you're presenting your pricing options. So what people tend to do is my lowest price option, and then below that, my next higher price option, and then below that, my next higher price option where they're stacked. So you scroll down the page and you see the lowest first, and then the next, and then the next. And so it goes up, up, up as you go down the page. A really common way that the tech industry presents their pricing information is this center stage effect, where they're putting them horizontal across the board and presenting these three pricing options in this way, and they're highlighting the center one, or the one that they want you to choose, and call it most popular for that central point. The other thing to keep in mind too is something called anchoring, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. This is the same idea, right? Where these just another visual to kind of help you understand what this can look like, but the idea of these all being horizontal on a page to present these various pricing options so that, and your eye immediately goes to the one that's highlighted and you want to see that first. So keep this in mind as you're building your pricing pages. You're sharing what your ticketing options are. You're sharing your experiential options. There's a lot of psychology that goes into the way that information is being displayed from a user experience. This is the best way to kind of show how this transcends. And I mentioned anchoring. And so like the anchor price in this scenario is the medium popcorn. So, if you've gone to the movies lately, pricing is probably even more than this. It's wild what people can charge for popcorn. You should borrow that for your farm. But the idea of the medium is $6.50 and the large is only 50 cents more, because that anchor price on the medium popcorn has been positioned as your mid price point. And so, well, if I only want a small popcorn, then I can spend $3 and only get a small popcorn. But if I want the next size up and I don't think the small is going to be enough, it's $6.50. Well, if I'm going to spend $6.50, I'm going to spend $7. Whereas if this was positioned as a small popcorn is $3, a medium popcorn is $5, and a large popcorn is $7, then the 3 doesn't feel as out of whack, right? Because it's like, oh, it's $3 for a small, it's only 5 for the medium, and then the large then being equally spaced from each other. But with that anchor price in the medium being 7.5, or I'm sorry, 6.5, and then the $7 being the large popcorn being $7, only 50 cents more, your anchored price is that medium popcorn. And so then the large doesn't feel so expensive. This is why it is not a good idea if you're going to share your pricing vertically down the page and start with your lowest level price, and you are just increasing and increasing as you go down the page. You're kind of anchoring your customer with your lowest price option, and then everything else after that feels more expensive. Even if all you do is flip that and your only option, let's say from your user experience, is to scroll it down the page. Okay, well, start with your most expensive offering at the top so that they have to go through the other options and scroll down to get the others. Keep in mind that you can use the psychology of pricing to anchor a signature offering as well. So let's say that your highest ticket price for somebody to come experience the farm is $49.99, and you want to push a signature experience that has that $49.99 experience in terms of being able to access everything on the farm. But if they spend $69.99, then they can also get a keepsake keychain, and they can get, a beverage at the farm as well. So that then is anchored right in that experience, and you can use this psychological pricing to push a signature kind of experience that inks people up a little bit higher. And then the idea here too that you can push people to your highest level, or if people are primarily coming to you and buying your lowest level ticket, how can you inch them a little bit higher to your mid-level ticket, and keep in mind things like this as well. The other thing that comes into this is the idea of positioning. Your position in the market as it relates to other options that are in the area, right? So the idea of your position relative to others. So just as we were talking about the idea of price point from small, medium to large in the popcorn example, or how the tech industry rolls this out in terms of their offerings across the board, this happens too in terms of your farm versus the farm down the street and what it looks like, sounds like, feels like to experience your farm versus the farm down the street. All of those things are related to your position, and the more refined your positioning is that aligns with your target customer, the more demand you're going to have from that customer, and the more you're going to be able to demand in terms of price point and experiential. And it comes back to this too. We looked at Rosewood Cape kidnappers. They are not the most luxurious in New Zealand. They're actually I think it was number 9 down here, on TripAdvisor for their area of luxury places to stay. So just keep in mind that, do your best and, take into account who is around you too that contributes to what your customer is evaluating. So the core learning goal here, number 2, was developing optimizing pricing structures. Remember that less is more. Premium isn't for everyone, and that's okay. And the idea that premium also builds loyalty. Timing is everything. The more you can do to closely connect the purchase to the experience, all the better. I also love the idea of a physical item. We talked about keepsakes earlier. The other thing that's great about physical items too is it creates a tangible takeaway to anchor that experience. Be smart, positioning pricing in a way that drives your consumer to a certain product or service that you want them to have. And so, again, going back to that pricing example, if your highest ticket price that you have right now is $15 and that's the only one you have, maybe you start creating some bundles so that it's a ticket and a drink and a keepsake, and you just kind of like play around from there. Brand matters from the visual identity to the customer service. Everyone's got to drink the Kool-Aid all across the board. And the more you can do that, the more you will have those sticky experiences and people who are all in driving your brand forward for you. How do we market to premium audiences? And how do we leverage the information that we have to understand who our premium audiences are and who may be, interested in some of those options? So you've got Google Analytics, social media analytics, so on and so forth here. We're going to talk about some external sources as well in terms of Spark Toro. But you can also use the data that you already have, right? You can leverage your POS system data and your email newsletter to understand who is opening my email newsletters. Do I segment those people out and just send them a special kind of experience that is only offered to our best of the best? You can segment it to those audiences and see how it does. Same with your POS system. Let's say you have somebody who comes back year after year and you want to reward them with some kind of extra experience. What can you do to leverage that information to be able to enrich that customer experience? And I ask that question openly, like I should have the answer, right? Yes, but it's so different from farm to farm, right? Because we've got mega farms that have like adventure farms that have all sorts of experiential offerings that are in the agritourism sector. And we've got like a small winery that just does a couple thousand cases of wine. And the solution is different based on who you are, right? And what your offering is. And so that's why I hesitate to give exact numbers and why all of this is just about the principles. And I'm asking you to ask yourself about these questions. How could I leverage this information? What could I offer to these people? Because your offering may be different if you're the little winery owner and you're the big adventure park destination, right? There's such a gamut there. And so just take that as a grain of salt, I guess, in terms of the idea of doing what's right for you and for your business and for your audience based on what you know about them. So I mentioned Spark Toro. I don't use this much, but it is a tool to understand what are some of the SEO terms that people are using and what's the general demographic of people who are searching for agritourism? How popular is that word? And I just searched for agritourism here. You could put any word in here. Maybe it's you're thinking of getting some goats and doing goat yoga. You could see how popular that term is in your region and where that information comes from. We'll tell you some more information about gender and about age distribution too, so you can kind of match that up with what's your experience based on who's currently coming to the farm. Or maybe your current customer is typically in this 51 to 65, but you want to attract this 18 to 25 audience to come to you. Well, what is that audience interested in? Are they going to be more interested in goat yoga than a 51 to 65? Probably, yeah. So if you're trying to attract a new audience, that's a great way that you can leverage this kind of research as well. And a lot of it comes down to keywords. So how you're talking about what the experience is. And so these are more screenshots from SparkTuro that you can leverage to understand what keywords you can and should be using to market those experiences as well. Um, Seth Godin, I'm a huge fan. Read anything he wrote. Great one to start with because it's very short, easy to digest, and a real good like thinking book. It's called The Dip by Seth Godin. Highly recommend that. But he has this theory that's called people like us do things like this. And it's the idea that human behavior is clustered and cultural. People tend to congregate in groups, and people like us, the people who go to the farm, do things like this. We also eat pizza from the local, artisan pizza shop on Friday nights. And so when you can apply that concept to your marketing, you can either do collaborations with that local artisanal pizza shop, or you can do, like a cross-branded experience. Maybe you're, I don't know, doing a pop-up with the goats at the at the pizza shop, or the pizza shop is doing a pop-up at the farm, that sort of thing, where how can you find these alignments of your customer so that it helps your discoverability of other people who fit that criteria. It just helps to kind of find those potential collabs. We did a campaign for this organization in New York, in upstate New York. It's called New York Kitchen. We ran this on multiple platforms, and we found that the boomers on Facebook is the one that performed best. So by running some advertising in this campaign on the New York Kitchen platforms over a period of time, we got a great understanding of what does that target audience look like that is resonating with that content. And then now they know, because of that information, that it was boomers on Facebook. We can double down on engaging boomers on Facebook to do more of that to engage them. And now where people can sometimes get stuck is I once had a client who was like, well, yes, we resonate with the boomers and these older audiences, but we really want to attract the young people. And how do we get the young people here? Like, I want Gen Zs and I want the millennials. And so if that's the case where you have a certain audience, how can you get a new audience? Influencers are a great way to go about that resonate with that audience, or thinking about, what is that audience looking for that I could bring in this experience that is going to want to make them come here. And then, maybe you're gifting experiences to local micro influencers to come and check out the farm and engage in that kind of experience and talk about it online. And then you're going to attract some kind of same-minded people like us do things like this, consumers, to come to the farm from there. If you're looking for like a general overview of like who is on what platform and where am I talking to people, this is a good snapshot of the ages that tend to engage on various platforms. This is not, this is not exclusive. TikTok is the one on the bottom here. This says it ends at 19. I'm nearly 40 and I love TikTok. So it's not exclusive, but it is the some of the more primary audiences on some of these platforms. The other thing to think about too is there is a theory that you need to be on every single social media platform, and that is simply not true. You should absolutely think about which platforms make the most sense for you, whether that's social media, word of mouth, public relations, email marketing, so on and so forth. You should think about which one of those are the right fit for you, and then which channels, like with social media, which platforms make the most sense, or if it's public relations, which publications kind of make the most sense for you with alignment for the customer that you're trying to reach. But you don't have to be everywhere. You don't have to do every single thing. And you should only add the marketing strategies that you're going to be able to be consistent with in the long term so that they truly make a difference in the business. A note on omni-channel strategy and the idea of kind of thinking broad strokes about these things. I love planning in this way where you kind of choose what are the marketing channels that make most sense for you. I list those on the left-hand side of a chart like this, and then kind of plan out throughout the course of the year. If this was a seasonal business that was only open September, October, November, I would want to ramp up in season and I would want to wind down post-season and prep going in to ramp up to the in season, but I can kind of take it pretty easy. I just need to show that the lights are on in these off season months. And so you would continue fleshing these out, and this could really be endless. But the idea of, like I mentioned, that you should only choose the platforms that make the most sense for you, and you do not have to be omni-channel, meaning omnipresent everywhere in all the places. Just do the ones that feel right to you, that you can be consistent with. The other point that I like to make as it relates to premiumization and sharing content on social media platforms is this idea of, and I shared this in my AI presentation as well. So if you came from there or if you're doing that next, you'll see this as well. But it's the idea of you are a farm, you are selling authenticity, you are selling an experience for your destination, right? And so when you're using stock photos, like our friend here, as opposed to authentic imagery, like the actual vineyard manager, John Kaiser, at our client, Fox Run Vineyards. It just is a nuanced difference with the idea of when you're using stock photography, you're kind of promoting an experience that's not exactly all the way there. And so you want to make sure that that you're using authentic photography. Hire a photographer. It's just something that you should do. You should do it at least once a year so you have fresh photos to be able to pull from. You're gonna find it to be really helpful in your marketing, especially to be able to do a photo shoot, have those photos, and then be able to pull from that vault over time so that you've got new photos all the time. I also shared this in the in my AI talk, and this is a pet peeve across the board. Please don't do this. Please don't use AI to generate images that look like this that are inauthentic and not at all aligned with the experience. Hopefully enough said from the previous slide that I shared, but absolutely use AI to help you develop content and tell a story and find insights and data and all of those things. I don't think that AI generated imagery really has a strong place in agritourism, especially because, again, you're selling a unique experience that is driven on authenticity. The idea too here about your marketing content, one of the things that makes this special, right? This case study that we were looking at from Cape Kidnappers is that one of the things that sets this apart is the idea of top-notch design and descriptive storytelling to really advocate for what that experience sounds like, looks like, feels like, so that people are compelled to choose that and to want to do it. It really makes a big difference. So sort of key takeaways here, high quality videography and photography really make a big difference, and they authentically convey the experience, and high quality written content using descriptive words too, especially emotional language is also really compelling. And those are the kind of guiding lights that you want to use when it comes to content. And just the idea too that, again, we talked about benchmarking Disney and the idea of, that's an organization with a large budget that we can learn from. Disney would never use stock photos, right? And so you shouldn't either. And that's a good thing to borrow from in terms of that experience. Key takeaways here for this section of how to discover marketing efforts that allow you to attract this premium audience. It's knowing your target audience and engaging with them regularly. We talked about consistency. Authentic representation of experiences in visuals and copy is absolutely critical. You want to make sure that how you're talking about the experience matches the actual experience. And then thirdly, that idea of benchmarking other destinations can help you draw inspiration to create something that's truly unique. That's all for this one. I hope this was an inspiring way to encourage you to premiumize your destination. As always, I want to thank Visit NC Farms for bringing me in to record these videos and tell you a little bit about some of the ways that can make a big impact on the farm. Thank you so much.